The small town of Crookwood, with its quiet streets and single-family homes, looked more like a picture postcard. It had a population of less than 5,000, and everything went smoothly. People knew each other, and their greatest excitement was at the annual fall festival or the high school football game. But one fall night, something changed, something dark and inexplicable. The first victim was Lisa Carter, a popular elementary school teacher. Lisa had always been an energetic and kind woman, and all the kids in the neighborhood loved her. Lisa's neighbors didn't notice anything until the next morning, when they found her body in her living room. Her body was lying horribly on the floor, as if she was struggling to breathe. But the strangest thing was this: there was no sign of forced entry or a struggle. The door was locked, and everything was in its place. The local police, led by Detective Daniel Hughes, initially thought Lisa's death was natural, perhaps a heart attack or respiratory arrest. But the medical examiner's report showed something completely different. Lisa had died of asphyxiation, but there were no marks of hands or tools on her body. That threw everything into disarray. 2 weeks later, Marcus Beale, a local mechanic, was murdered in his garage. Marcus was a big, strong man who had barely been hurt. But his body was found exactly like Lisa's, a face full of terror, wide-open eyes, and no sign of a struggle or an attacker. This time, however, the police had a strange lead. The moment of the murder was recorded by the CCTV cameras inside the garage. In the video, Marcus was working alone on a car. Suddenly, something invisible pulled him to the ground. He struggled, his hands grabbed the air, and then silence. His body fell motionless to the ground. News of the murders spread like wildfire throughout the city. People were scared. Some said there was a professional killer in town, a killer who left no trace. Others spread even stranger rumors, that the murders were the work of a supernatural being or even the devil. The shops closed earlier than usual, and the streets were deserted after sunset. But Daniel Hughes was a seasoned and logical detective. He couldn't believe the rumors. He sat at his desk at night, going through the files. But the more he searched, the less he understood. There was no connection between Lisa and Marcus. No common enemy, no debt, no enmity, nothing. One night Daniel received a strange call. A man's voice on the line said, "You can't see something that isn't there." The man's voice was cold and lifeless, as if it had come straight from hell. "Who are you?" Daniel asked, but the line was disconnected. There was no number to call. It was as if the call had come from somewhere. Daniel lay awake all night thinking about this sentence. Something that doesn't exist? What does this mean? Could this killer be invisible? 3 nights later, a third victim is found. This time, Sarah McLean, a young woman who has recently moved into the Croods. Sarah had lived a quiet, uneventful life, but her body is found in her small apartment, just as before. The police had no film this time. But what shocked everyone was the fact that on the wall next to his body was written in blood, "You can't see what isn't there." This was the same sentence that Daniel had heard a few nights earlier. He was now certain that he was dealing with something unusual. But what? Daniel was slowly going crazy. At night, he would lie awake in his house and stare at the wall. Shadows seemed to move. Sometimes he would hear a sound behind him, but when he turned around, there was nothing. He felt like someone or something was watching him. Finally, he decided to stay in the house one night and trap the killer. He left all the lights on and put a gun on the table. Hours passed and nothing happened. But around 3 a.m., he heard footsteps in the room. Daniel picked up his gun and said in a trembling voice, "Who's there?" He didn't get any answer, but he felt something behind him. When he turned around, suddenly the air it became heavy. It was as if invisible hands were wrapped around his neck. Daniel struggled. The gun fell from his hand and fell to the ground. The last thing he saw was a shadow moving impossibly against the light. Daniel's body was found the next morning. His face was filled with deep horror, as if he had seen something beyond human comprehension. The police could not find any more clues. One by one, the cases were closed and the city of Crude seemingly returned to normal life. But people still know that the invisible killer is still in the shadows, waiting for the next victim. The lights remain on at night and no one dares to walk the streets alone. Everyone knows that this nightmare will never end.